You are listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud, conversations about trauma and healing from two women who are doing the work.
Hey everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Sher and I have a little bit of a different episode today because we are going to process through an experience that I just had that we actually have not processed through yet. She knows about it and we've had a short discussion, but she's going to ask me questions about my experience that she hasn't even asked me yet. I want to just make it pretty clear that this could be triggering for some women, probably a lot of women, actually. We know that women have these experiences and experiences like these all the time. I'm going to say every day, all over the world. Someone is having some type of an experience like this. Our heart in bringing this is for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to keep it hidden. Not only do I not want to keep it hidden, I actually want to talk about it. I'm the one that reached out to Sher and said, what would you think about processing this experience with me on our podcast? And she said, yes. The other part of our heart here is, as we go through this experience, can you be curious about anything that you've experienced? And I want to say, maybe if you've had a voice that has said, oh, that's no big deal, that just happens to everyone. Listen to that voice. And what Sher and I want to say to you is actually a big deal, especially when there is one in every 3 to 4 girls, women that are being sexually assaulted every single day. Like, we think this is a big deal, Sher.
Yeah, it is a big deal. And your willingness to talk about it openly and vulnerably and carefully, as we want to do today for you and for our listeners, with great care, to talk about something that unfortunately is so common. That as women, as girls, we have these experiences from very young, all through our lives. And I will say, I don't know a woman who has not experienced some kind of sexual harm. And this is tragic. This makes us furious. And we know the importance of offering good care and getting good care and being able to bring it into the light and not hold it in secret, not allow shame to get established in these stories, as they have been for us in the past, to not allow shame to get established and instead to allow love and care and goodness to come into the very place where evil continues to attempt to bring harm and to mar our glory. And so that is where we're at today, and that is what we want to bring. So, Kandace, I wonder, and I'll just repeat to our listeners, I have not heard this full story yet, and I just wonder if you would want to share what happened. And again, this was just a couple of days ago, so it's very fresh. I want to say to you again, we can pause at any point that you want to or need to. I want us, even though we're doing it on the recording, to move through this with just great sensitivity and care. Yeah, where would you like to start?
I would like to start, for those of our listeners who heard us talk about IFS and parts, I would like to start with a part that's coming up in me right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get sidetracked, but I just want to say I actually have a part that is saying, why are you talking about this? It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And can I just, Kandace, thank you. I want to just say to that part, to this beautiful, protective part of you and your whole system, I want to say we hear you. We see you. Thank you for bringing your good voice and for asking your good question. And I think it's worthy to answer. Why are we talking about this, Kandace? Why do you want to talk about this? And even as you answer, you might want to even just address that beautiful protective part and just let her know why you feel like it's important.
Yeah. what's feeling most true to me is this part has paid a price to tell stories.
Mm.
And are we going to be safe? Am I going to be safe to tell the story? Not only to receive your care, but to let other women know they don't have to be alone in these
Yeah.
stories and that they are a big deal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then the fear of judgment or misunderstanding or somebody to bring more harm as a result. And we do know that this does happen to women a lot when they have tried to share their story, that the questions that get turned back on them that somehow bring shame and blame. And I want this beautiful part of yours to know, like, we are not going to do that. I already know, like, I believe every single thing that you will bring without any doubt or question. I'm just wondering if this part would be willing to unblend, if she can trust that you are in your highest self, I am in my highest self, and that we are moving forward very carefully with awareness. And I'm just wondering if this protective part can just step back a little bit and trust you and me that we are going to bring great care.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I know that's true. Mhm.
Yeah, good. Okay. And just thank you for that part. And we love her protection and her care, and we honor that. And yet we want to let her know, like, she gets to be a kid, she gets to play and rest, and that we don't need her to work today
Yeah.
to take care of you in this
Definitely.
situation.
That's what she wants.
Good. So maybe just take a breath, because I'm glad you noticed that, and I'm glad that you brought that awareness.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll kind of share something towards the end after the experience, and I'll walk you through the experience. I did not even realize how dysregulated I was almost through the whole experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I talked to I called the police station, and it wasn't until I talked to the woman and there was some kindness in her voice. And then when she said, "I'm sorry," I mean, boom, like just the tears and feeling so young, Cher. I mean, so young.
Yeah. Yeah.
And realize, wow, I felt trapped. In broad daylight, I felt trapped.
Yeah.
I have a pretty consistent routine that I go walk almost every morning at a park that I love that has water and some trails that are mostly out in the open, but then there's some sections that go into a more secluded wooded area. I don't even know if it's a mile that it's more secluded. Probably not. No, maybe half. So I had parked, and as I was getting ready to go to my starting point, there was a man on the bridge that I looked at, and when I looked at him, he had his camera up, and it looked like he was taking a picture of me. So as I got closer, I was kind of being a little jovial, and I said, "Are you taking a picture of me?" And he kind of laughed. He goes, "No, I'm trying to take a picture of me." And he said, "Would you mind?" Initially, I thought, people do that all the time. I do that all the time. "Hey, would you take our picture?" So as I took his camera and he was posing on the bridge, I had another thought that flashed through my mind. Wow, this looks like one of those scenes that I get a Facebook friend request on. I don't know. I get these quite often of these men who, are very attractive men in this scene that usually they live overseas and they have some government job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I took the picture, and he had said very little, but when he first said little, I did notice, like, oh yeah, this guy has some kind of an accent, which that alone didn't bother me. I'm not that wasn't the issue, that he was a foreigner. But then after he got done, he kind of jumped down and started kind of walking with me. And I think that was my first. And he said, "Do you mind if I just walk along?" Well, as women, we know that when we look back, then we get into the shame and beat ourselves up of why didn't I just say hell no?
Yeah.
Or hell yes, I mind.
Right.
But I just said, yeah, that's fine. Because we're still very much out in the open, and there are some people. I still see other people at this point, and so it was a very surfacey, conversation. He asked me, my name. I lied. I already knew within, I'm going to say 3 minutes. There is no way I am telling this man my name.
Yeah.
Then the question came, how old are you? And then I'm like, this guy's collecting data.
Yeah.
But I'm in we're rounding the corner to go into the little wooded section. Like I have a taser in my pocket. And I did go towards, I will tase your ass.
Yeah.
And I also know if he wanted to, I couldn't do that fast enough.
Yeah.
If he wanted to overtake me. I lied about my age because I'm thinking, okay, he's looking for identifying information and he may have already gotten my picture.
Yeah.
Who knows what you can do with that? But I realized the further we got, all I'm doing is thinking, I got to get away from this man. And this is where, if you are not trauma informed,
Mm.
and you begin asking insensitive questions, why didn't you just? So we're kind of in that hidden area, and I'm already thinking as soon as we get around that bend, I'm telling him it's time for me to get home. He even asked me, well, how long do you usually walk for? So his questions, right? He asked me what I did. I did ask him what he did. And he told me he was a cook or something and that he was from another country. But my body was saying something is very off.
Yeah.
But then Cher, he said, well, it looks like you take really good care of your body.
Mm.
And I'm
Wow.
like, you don't say that to a woman that you've known for 10 minutes. And so we got around the corner. And by this point, so here's what I want to say. I did not know how dysregulated I was until later, but I knew at this point, I actually am not safe having a conversation with this man.
Yeah.
He has some ulterior motives here. And then when we got around the corner, I just said, well, I gotta get my day going. And as I'm walking away, he goes, he said something, but I couldn't quite understand him. And so he had his translation on his phone and he typed and he held it up for me to come read. And I even hesitated to go read it, but I walked up just enough to see it and it said, I'm sorry if I've disturbed you.
Mm.
And it actually kind of felt sinister.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only was he not sorry, he knew.
Yeah.
And was he a single man trying to see if there was someone at the park that he could hook up with? I have no freaking idea. But even if that was the case, and
Yeah.
he wasn't a real predator, here's what I'm going to say. Don't talk about a woman's body
Yeah.
to her
Yeah.
in that way at all, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I already knew something was off, but I'm thankful because if there was any question in my mind, am I so still in my trauma and triggered that a guy can't even be friendly to me?
Mm.
But when he asked that question, I knew like, oh no, this isn't good.
Yeah. 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 And then what happened next, Candace, after you read that and you had such awareness from, like you said, from beginning until end, there was a knowing that this wasn't, you had a knowing the whole way through. And so you were careful, you were aware. Yeah. Were you able to just walk away then, or what happened?
I want to throw in here really quickly. I've had this happen. It's one reason I'm very cautious about even walking on my road. I've actually had this happen before. There's some anger of the familiarity of it, but so after it happened, I went into okay. I don't want him to see what I'm driving,
Yeah.
so I went towards the bathroom, thinking, I mean, this is what women have to do.
Yeah.
So I went into the bathroom and went to the bathroom and kind of waited for a few minutes and then walked back out and looked around. He was kind of walking towards a vehicle, but I don't know if it was his or not, or if he kept walking, but I couldn't see him anywhere in sight. So I did walk to my vehicle. And the first thing that I did was call my husband. At first he wasn't, it could seem like just somebody that was being friendly. But when I told him that he started talking about my body,
Yeah.
he goes, "Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
not okay." And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and call the police
Yeah.
because even if there's a little bit of chance that I'm wrong, I would rather risk that they check something like this out to help a woman or children or whatever. Like
Mhm.
I didn't even care. I would rather be wrong,
Yeah.
than to ignore it. And so I called the police and
Can I pause you just for a second there, Candace? Because I know this is another part of the story, but I'd like to come back a little bit if that's okay. I want to invite you to take a breath because that was a lot. And I'm feeling a lot of emotion right now.
Mhm,
I could weep and I could rage.
mhm,
Okay.
yeah.
Firstly, because this kind of story has been written into your body, even that you had a knowing immediately, like you knew what it was to feel unsafe and you felt that right away. I feel angry about that. And I'm also grateful that you had awareness to be watchful and to like you had wisdom. You do have wisdom written into your body, like you had the knowing, you had the gut level that this
Mhm.
man was not safe even from just seeing him standing on the bridge.
Yeah, and I'm just aware that these are the kinds of things, for those of us who have daughters, and yes, we want our sons to be wise and safe too, but we know as women, hands down, we are way more vulnerable for
Yeah.
things like that
Yeah.
and bodily harm.
Yeah.
We think about these things like we want our daughters to know, we want them to listen to their body.
Yeah.
And yet I still have gone back to what could I have done different?
Mm, yeah. But you're there, you're in the moment. And you said a few times, Candace, that you didn't even recognize how dysregulated you were. And this is the truth. Your body went into dysregulation, your brain went into dysregulation pretty quickly. And we know that when that happens, the limbic brain takes over, the prefrontal cortex goes offline, which means your decision making capabilities in that moment became decreased really quickly.
Well, they actually became a child.
Yeah.
And so this is the part that as I processed after it was over,
Yeah.
I became a little girl that was trapped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Feel
I,
that. I'm just feeling that in my body, Candace. I want us to just pause just a little bit here. Like, yes. And this is what we feel so often. Like, you have stories. Your brain and your body are holding the memories of what that felt like as a child. And then that is ushered forward now into this, having done all the work that we have done,
Mhm,
having all of the wisdom and all of the awareness, and it remains true. The neural pathways are there.
mhm,
And when your body sensed a similar situation, all all of that was still there and you felt trapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this would be a beautiful transition of, but what was different today
Yeah.
than for the little girl? Do you want to go over that in part two?
Let's talk a little bit about that. And then we want our listeners to know we are going to do a part two where Kandace and I will process a little bit more about the call to the police and what happened there. And, but talk a little bit more about, let's just wrap this in a place where we can leave our listeners with where you're at and how you're holding it.
Yeah, I think the most, looking back even just a few days ago, I felt pretty disconnected to feeling my emotions, even though I had a lot of stuff going on. When I called the police and I started describing to her, I found myself almost wanting, like, that part that we tended to, she was saying almost like, "Why are you doing this? It's not that big of a deal. You're going to be okay." And so I actually was working through that. But when I got to that place in the woods where I realized I felt nobody else's eyes are here, and in the story, and then the question about my body, I just started crying. And then I'm like telling her, "I'm sorry, I'm crying." And then I'm like, "Why am I crying so much?"
Yeah.
And I went, "I've been in trauma."
Yeah. You had been traumatized. You went into the trauma response, right? And now, several minutes later, I don't know how. Do you have a sense of how much longer it was before the tears came?
When I was talking to her,
Yeah,
when I started talking about going around the wooded part
yeah,
and then started talking about my body,
yeah,
we had been in the conversation for 5 minutes, maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, so would you say that there was, up until that point, was it kind of a state of freeze?
Oh, yeah. I was kind of just going through the facts.
Yeah,
And keep in mind, I was going through those facts while I'm hearing this part in me
yeah,
trying to protect me from telling the story.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
why I think, Cher, and I think that's why I reached out to you pretty quickly and say, I feel like I feel like I want to share this story.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that feels really kind and redemptive for my little girl.
Mm,
Yeah, I just felt my insides. I don't know, I just felt this love wash through me.
yeah. That you, what? That you, yeah,
And I am seeing her and going to love her by telling the story
right.
without the, like, when I was a little girl, what that would have meant.
Yeah. There's so much more. I don't want to pause, but I know that we need to, and we are going to come back and talk more about this. We wanted to bring this really carefully to our listeners today, and yet we wanted to bring it. And I love how this part came forward, how we weren't even planning for bringing that in, and yet this is where processing our trauma can be so powerful for us. Like, something came forward that you didn't even realize was there. And now this part, who was so hurt as a little girl, has received more care in a completely different scenario. And yet, to her, to your body, to your brain, these stories that many, many years ago are receiving care even today. And it makes a difference, and it offers love to enter, love from me, love from you, to enter as we offer care to our little parts, to our body, to our brain. it makes the pathway for love to come in and bring healing and care that we have so desperately needed and continue to need.
Mhm.
And this is where it's such an honor to understand the value of receiving and giving care when a person has or is experiencing trauma. It does some things for us and in us that are so, you use the word redemptive, so deeply restorative and healing. Such an honor to be with you in this day, Candace. Thank you for your openness and vulnerability and willingness to just offer this as such a huge gift to our audience.
Yeah, I want to emphasize, please come back next week for part 2, because one of the things that I did as I was asking, why am I sharing this on the podcast? And I shared those reasons, but I want to reemphasize that part of I believe this is purposeful and helping other women who maybe have that part or another part that's saying, and we need to listen, but like, can you get that out in the open to someone?
Yeah. Someone who
Thank
can
you.
offer good care. Oh, such an honor, Candace. Yeah, so good to be with you. I love you too.
Thank you for listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud. Make sure to check out the show notes for links to suggested resources and social media. Like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our weekly content. And if you don't mind, take a moment to rate and review us. Your feedback is extremely valuable and contributes to the success of this podcast. One last thing. If you have found this podcast helpful in any way, or if you have questions on how to take the next steps on your healing journey, please reach out to us via email at KandaceSher@gmail.com. That's KandaceSher@gmail.com. Our sound engineer is Jeremiah Jones of Auditory LLC. We welcome you to join us for more conversations soon. Take care.